Okay, we're going to do some problems involving finance on the TI-83 calculator. To find the finance, you'll press Apps and select Finance, and the first choice is TVM Solver. If you have a real old calculator, there'll be a yellow Finance over here, so it'll be second Finance. But one of those two methods will get you into this screen. So let's look at the problem we're going to solve. We're buying a home. The price is $275,000, 20% down payment. The loan is fixed interest rate for 30 years, and the rate is 5.5%. Tax on the home is $1,950, and insurance is $950. Both of those are per year. So at this stage, you should hit pause and work the problem now. Okay, you're back from pause and you've worked it, but now we'll go over how we work this together. First thing we need to find is the payment, so we're going to put in all the pieces. N is the number of periods in the problem, so that's 30 years times 12 months for 360. Interest rate, 5.5. We enter it just as a number in the TI-83. We don't turn it into a decimal. Present value, amount of money we're borrowing. Now the home price is $275,000. I'm going to multiply that by 0.8. If we have 20% to put down, we still need to borrow 80% or 0.80, 0.8, same thing. So we're actually borrowing $220,000. I'm going to write that down because I may need it later. Okay, and let's see, what else do we need to check? Payments per year and compoundings per year are 12. This is monthly payments, 12 months in a year. Housing payments are actually at the beginning of the month. Makes a slight difference to our answer to do that properly. Alpha solve, and we find a principal and interest payment. What we pay to the bank is $1243.44. This comes up with a negative sign in a calculator. Reason being that the calculator uses cash flow. $220,000 came to us, that was positive, and we used that to buy the house. We send the money to the bank, so it goes away from us in the payment. It becomes important when you have three financial variables, present value, payment, and future value, to make sure the signs agree with what you want. Principal and interest payment is what we pay to the bank. Part is principal, a very small part early, and the rest is interest. PITI is principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So at this point, we're going to need to add in the part for tax. So we have two of those ingredients, 1243.44 plus, and now we have $1,950 in annual taxes and $950 a year in annual insurance. Those need to be divided by 12. So this doesn't really occur in here. This would never be part of the bank payment. I'm going to get out of that screen. So we take the original payment there plus $1,950 plus $950, the two that are yearly, and divide those by 12. You can divide them by 12 individually or add them up and divide by 12. It won't matter. And so the real payment that an owner of this home is going to see is $1,485.11. So positive, negative, not so concerned with that. It's your monthly payment that will cover your tax and insurance. And the way this works is you'll send that to the bank. They will save the tax and insurance proportion in what's called an escrow account, and they will pay those bills when they come due. So now let's find out how much we'll owe after 1 year. Now you're paying $1,243 a month times 12 months. It might be tempting to think that your loan value would drop by all those payments you gave the bank, almost $15,000. Well, let's have a look and see what really happens. We go back into the finance calculator. The problem is still set up as it was. 1 year later is 12 months. So the only change I need to make is N is 12. 12 months, I borrowed $220. I've made 12 of these payments monthly and everything else remains the same. 1 year later becomes future value. And at this point, it is important that this be negative and this positive if you were retyping these in. And I find that I actually owe $217,036.40. Now that might shock you a little bit. Our loan started at $220. We paid $15,000 roughly. And the debt only dropped by $3,000, less than $3,000. Because most of your initial payment to the bank is actually interest. Very little, as you can see, is actually paying off the loan. How much would you owe 15 years? Well, that's halfway into the loan. And you can do the arithmetic right there if you wish. Go back to future value and solve on that line. And I find out that I owe $152,877.38. So if you sold the home 15 years later, this is the debt you would still have to pay off. Now you might wonder, we started off owing $220. Why isn't it half? Halfway through the loan is 15 years. Why hasn't it dropped to $110? where you're actually paying off a loan, it drops kind of in a figure about like that. The early years are very little, later years are much steeper, instead of any kind of a line. The reason is you owe much more money, which is being charged interest at each of these months or years through the loan till the very end. At the very end, there's very little interest. Most of your payment is going directly to your balance. And halfway through, we can see there's a big difference. Instead of what we would linearly predict to be half the debt, we owe quite a bit more. This is not some kind of scam. This is simply how interest works. Now let's do the next question. If we pay an extra $100 a month, how would that help us out? I'm going to resolve things. I set future value back to 0, and I'm just going to resolve to make sure everything is in concordance with what I had originally. 1243.44 it is. We're back in business here. We've got the original problem in. I pay an extra $100 a month. This would change this to a negative 1343. Simply put the 100 in there. It has to stay negative. And now it says, when will the loan be paid off? Well, the only thing sort of related to time is n, number of periods of time. So I will solve on the line for n. And I get 300.67 months roughly. So we went from 360 months, we've saved almost 60 months, or 5 years, nearly 5 years before, 1 month shy of completely 5 years early. So we'll pay it off in about 25 years, and the last payment will be a bit small if we were to do this extra 100. So a fairly dramatic effect. Total paid to bank over life of loan. So that's the original loan. So I'm going to go back and resolve this again. 360, everything back. Make sure that everything's in agreement. 1243, it is. Total paid to bank over life of loan. Actually, I didn't need to do that. All I need to do is take my 1243.44, my checks, times, I make 360 of those checks. It's not done in the financial calculator. 1243.44 times 360. And I get a value of, I will pay $447,638.40. Now we've rounded the penny, so it'll probably be off, maybe as much as $1 or $2 after 360 such payments. If the payment was, it was a 15-year loan at 4.75, okay. Back into finance again. And 15 years is 180 months. 4.75. Present value, we borrow the same amount, and I solve right here and get a new payment of $1704.48. So your payment would be quite a bit higher despite a lower interest rate. You're seeing $500 more to the bank. You would add the same amounts in for this. However, you would have the advantage of paying your home off in 15 years.